So, and that brings me to introduce actually Leslie's son. So Leslie, before I introduce you, so your son is Joe, and what does, so Joe, what do you do? You're right now in California, in Los Angeles.
Perlman, yes, in California. Thank you guys for welcoming us here. I work as a acting and performance coach for celebrities, world leaders, TED Talk presenters. We help actors, my studio, we have an international studio. We help actors deliver award-level performances. We help the sort of executive world leader, TED Talk doctors develop charismatic confidence within seconds for maximum impact on your audiences. So really in the realm of performances, and worked with some of the, we've taught at IMHL a few times, right, Mom?
Right, sweetie.
Yeah. So that's what I do, but mostly actors, but a lot of other folks who are not actors.
Joseph did some coaching for Joanne Liu when she was running the first time for president of Doctors Without Borders, because the first time he came, it was for her class. And then he came 2 more times. Usually it's, getting the schedule to work out. So hopefully with your group, Rick, he'll join us somewhere along the way. And if not in person, we can do it online.
Emotions and body attitudes to light up and lift your audiences off their seats. And mostly my big thing is if it's not fun, it's not working. So how can you have maximum fun in whatever you're doing? And yeah, thanks for welcoming us.
So I'll say one more thing about what Joseph did using an example, because it speaks to the topic for today, is how do we train health leaders? And I'll tell you in a minute that we don't, but pretending we do, one of the men in the previous cohort, the day that Joseph was there in the classroom with us, was planning for a meeting that he was about to have with the leaders of the Taliban. And this was the guy who worked with the WHO, among other organizations, United Nations, and he was preparing for this meeting. And so he was one of the people that Joseph worked with.
You want me to tell them what we did so that they weren't killed?
Well, let me turn it back to Rick and save what you did, because I think we're going to bring you into the IMHL.
We'll save it for another time, but it was interesting.
Yeah, but really interesting. And I'll just introduce, because there are 2 more. I invited all my kids to
please go ahead
to join us. So there's Alexandra, who's on here as Ali Michelle. Ali and her husband also live in California. They live in Northern California in Palo Alto. And Ali's her husband is French, and he's sort of in the health area because he's a biomedical engineer and had developed a hearing aid that was unique, started his own company, et cetera. They live up there with their family. And Lily Harder, who's on, is my youngest daughter, and she lives with her family in Cleveland. So all my kids are in the US, and they're all doing really interesting things. And I thought, since I'm going to talk about our program, I said, if you have nothing to do, log on and join us.
I couldn't have thought of such a better idea, Leslie. And actually, this is a good introduction for why you're here. And I think, I think you're a silent leader in this IMHL program. You're the person that's always prepared to help people, to serve them, and to have them live the best experience that they can. And you always bring people together. And now today, bringing your family here to participate, and surely we'll ask them to give us some information on you personally. And I've asked around as well, so that's...
We'll do that.
Oh, this is going to be good. So Leslie, so you're I wanted really that the residents in this, our trainees in the Living Lab, have the opportunity. So we brought you in at the first day of the first rotation we ever did in this Living Lab. This Living Lab is really highly inspired by the training you provided us at the IMHL that's ongoing. And really, You were there with Liz, and we had Henry as well explain the program, and it was very helpful. So we also want to talk a little bit about the program, but we want to talk to you about you, because I do think that, it's interesting. We don't put you on the stage enough, I think, for all that you do in this program. And it's appreciated. It's unanimous. Everybody loves you, and they feel that someone's in charge. And I think there's lots to learn about a leader of your style that is able to keep the vision, but also keep the operations going and very functional, but also have it actually not too rigid, to keep it open-minded and always being open to new ideas. And so I think that's very special. It's a hard program to run. I want everybody to understand this is an international program. There are 50 people in the class. They come from 17 countries. So it's different cultures, different objectives. People are not all from medicine, different fields of healthcare. It's very difficult. And it's a private program, so people pay lots of money. It's a private program in a public university. Already that's kind of a special twist. And you're working also with, with one of the most famous, business professors in the world, Henry Mintzberg, that, I've had the pleasure of, we've all had the pleasure of working with Henry over the last, since the start of the pandemic on the Blind Spot group. And so I got to know you a lot. I feel I'm a bit like family with all of you guys. And I wanted Marie-Josée to come here today, and all of the students to be able to learn from you. So before we go ahead and start on this, are you a happy person, Leslie?
Way
happy?
Oui. Yes.
Oui. Because you look like a happy person, and we talked about this. Happiness is not always visible from the outside. So we need to think about this, and we need to let people know what's their level of happiness. And you were on our conference the other day, and so I don't know if you've reflected on that, but it sounds like you're a happy person. And so
for the most part,
what makes,
I am.
Pardon me?
For the most part.
For the most part. So what makes you the happiest?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I both John and I are really blessed with our families. We between us, we have 5 kids and 10 grandkids. My mother, who is 98, is living, although she has dementia. She's living in California, but she's living. I have a large family, and for the most part, people are in good health. I love what I do professionally, and I'm happy that I can do it from where I am. I'm in Montana. We arrived in Montana March 5th. I had not planned to stay here more than about a month, 6 weeks. I'd planned to come back to Montreal, graduation, our June module and all that. We've been, quote unquote, stuck here since March, but I'm happy. There are very few things that make me unhappy. One of them is when my husband goes out without his mask. I mean, that's right now, we're lucky. We're really lucky. We have health, we have enough to eat, we have a roof over our heads, and I'm living in a beautiful part of the world.
So what you just said right now, so I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say too that all these connections and this very large network that the IMHL provides to me is, I can't tell you how rewarding. And it's not just your cohort, although you guys are special. But we say that to every cohort, the 49 of you. But I get emails from people who graduated like 5 years ago. Someone from Saudi Arabia will write to me to tell me what they're doing and how excited they are, or how nervous they are, because they've just been made chair of a department where, 95% of the people are older. More experienced, but yet they're coming in. I mean, just feeling with the diversity and the challenges and the excitement of the program, it makes me happy. Not everybody's happy with their work. I am.
We certainly feel that. And what you just said for all of the students in the rotation, so what Leslie just did right there is express gratitude. So she expressed gratitude for life, for her job. She mentioned it. And actually the expression of gratitude, or even, just thinking about it at the end of her day, actually contributes to our level of happiness. And that's been studied quite a bit, actually. So already you give an example of leadership. So just, can you, tell us so first of all, what is the IMHL? For those, just an introduction. So what is this program anyway?
The IMHL is the International Masters for Health Leadership Program at McGill. It's a master's degree program for people, anyone in the health sector who comes with some years of experience. And we're open in the program, not just to physicians, although we have a lot of physicians, to other clinicians, to non-clinicians, to people in pharma. We've had pharmacists, dentists, osteopaths, clinical managers. We've had lawyers for healthcare institutions. So it's an opportunity to bring people together from different parts of the health sector to help improve the way healthcare is delivered around the world. That's sort of our motto, our tagline, if you will. And to help with it, Henry Mintzberg will be the first person to say, we don't train leaders and we don't train managers, because you can't train a manager and you can't train a leader in an academic program. We can help them develop, and we can help them learn about management and learn about themselves in the context of management and leadership. But I don't think we can really train somebody to be a leader. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that as the academic director of a program for leadership. Okay.
So what are the specifics of this program? So it's not a program like people think like a regular management program. It's a program that has a special way of doing things, and the special mind frames, and you go through. Can you give us just the outline of how it is different than a regular MBA, EMBA, for example?
Yeah, and that's a question we get a lot from people who are considering applying to the program. So our pedagogy is really unique. And a typical MBA or master's program in management is usually organized by discipline. So you'll have a module or a course in finance, or a course in strategy, or a course in organizational behavior, operations management. Our program is designed around what are called managerial mindsets. And it allows us to bring these disciplines into the mindsets, but not to focus on them in a way that they're usually taught in other programs. We move in our program from a focus on the individual, which is our reflective mindset, focusing on self, to learning about the organization, to then a focus on the bigger context in which the organization sits, and then to the work of teams and collaborations, and then finally to change. So we bring the disciplines in. So for example, in our analytic mindset, we brought in financial management, we brought in strategy, but they're brought in a way that allows the participants in the program to integrate them to their own work. So a big focus in our program is application to practice in real time. And when we say real time, we mean in the classroom. So in our classroom, as Rick knows and MJ knows, we are only at round tables. We don't sit in one of these tiered MBA style classrooms. We're at round tables with 5-ish people at a table. Tables change up every day. So if you're in a group of 49 participants, and notice we don't call them students, we call them participants. When you're in a group of 49 people from 17 countries and you're with different people every day, listening to an instructor, but with the focus on application to practice, you learn not only how to bring frameworks and concepts into your own work, but you understand from other people at that table, from their unique environments, their countries, their health systems, their organizations, themselves, what's different? What's worked in one part of the world that maybe didn't work in your part of the world? Or what can you share about your unique situation with people from other parts of the world. And I'll say one more thing about our pedagogy. We tell every instructor who's going to teach with us that we have what we call a 50-50 rule. And the 50-50 rule suggests that they should not be lecturing in any sort of formal way more than 50% of the time that they're with the group. And the other 50% of the time they're with the group, doesn't have to be all at once, but over the course of their session, should be devoted to the work at the tables and applying to practice. So there's one person who consistently breaks that 50-50 rule and lectures more than he should, and it's Henry Mintzberg. And we tell him. So he's the biggest culprit of breaking the 50-50. So the focus in the program really is on the learning that the participants in the program bring to the program and bring to others, which is why a work experience is so important and why we are just short of requiring everyone who joins the program to be working during the time they're in the program. We don't want people taking time off. And for the most part, we don't want people coming to the program who are not working. It happens occasionally. But application to practice in real time is where the learning in our program takes place.
So, and this program is sought after around the world, really. And I must say, I feel really privileged to be part of this. You know, lots of famous people join this program. Like in my class, there's you know, one guy that runs a hospital in Lebanon. Like you know, and in these times of crisis, he has a very important job. And Joanne Yu, of course, the students know her. They met, this group met Joanne as well. She came in, she spent a week in Charlevoix and is a strong participant of the Living Lab. She's also a graduate of this group. Mm-hmm. Jean-Simon Letourneau is a student. Laurence, you know, François de Champlain. Can you name other famous people that have joined this program and that actually are doing something really, and there are many, but that have struck you as bringing quite significant change in healthcare?
Yeah, gosh, there are many. Conrad Sauvé, who is the president and CEO of the Canadian Red Cross, is also an alumnus of the program. He's really still involved with the program. He comes back and teaches. We missed him back in February because the day he was supposed to come and teach, he happened to be coordinating the return of the first group of people coming back from China during the outbreak of COVID. So we missed him back then. There was a woman back in 2013 whose name is Padma Venkata Subramanian. And Venkata is she was from Bangalore. She's now the Dean of the School of Public Health in Chennai in India. And Padma, by training, was a biochemist when she came to us. And she, in that very first week, in the first module, told the group that she had invented a little copper device. It honestly looked like a little copper coil about this long, maybe this long. And she said that in her lab, this copper coil showed that it could purify drinking water for a very, very low price so that people in rural parts of India could help to purify their drinking water if they couldn't afford to buy the big copper pitchers. And she said her biggest challenge was she didn't have the resources to take this from lab to land. So she could develop it in her lab and test it, but she didn't have the resources to field test it. Another woman in the group ran a nonprofit organization in Kenya. She was from Kenya, in Nairobi. She and Padma teamed up, led by a third person in the group who was originally from Jordan, but he was living in Ontario. He was sort of their leader and their organizer, and they applied for a Canada Grand Challenge grant to develop this and to field test it. And by the time we got to our fourth module, which in those days happened to be in Bangalore, they got $100,000 to field test this device. And it was so successful that now it's being marketed and it's being used in the rural areas of India and Kenya to help purify drinking water. So they may not be names that have been in the press, but what they did was just absolutely formidable. And we have so many examples of people who came to the program. At one time, we had a lot in a cohort from Saudi Arabia. So over the years, we've had a lot of Saudi physicians, and time after time, many of them trained in Canada for their fellowships, their residencies. They go back, and because they've had the combination of the medical and the management training, they're put in charge of departments, of whole hospitals, of clinics, almost right away when they come back, and they're young. So we get emails from them constantly about how they've just been made, head of a hospital or head of a department. And I'll sometimes get an email saying, please set up a call with me. I'm really scared. I don't know what to do. And I'll have to tell them, you do know what to do. You learned this in the program and you do know what to do, but they're put in leadership positions. So they've sort of been designated leader by their superiors in the kingdom, in their part. Other people from different parts of the world have sort of gone through promotions in their own organizations, their countries, sometimes their governments, their ministries, based on the fact that they go back to the workplace and they model their learning in the program. And it's impressive.
And how did you get into this business? How did you become director of this program? And what's the history of this?
That's interesting. Okay. So I did an MBA back in the day at Boston University, but I did it with a specialization in healthcare management at the time. And so I was living in Boston, finished my doctorate at Boston University, moved to Baltimore. So I was teaching for a while at the Kennedy School, Harvard's Kennedy School.
Harvard.
But at the Kennedy School of Government. So it wasn't a health program, it was a public administration program. This is going back. John and I get married in 2000. In 2000, I moved to Baltimore briefly because he was at Johns Hopkins. I didn't stay there long. We both went to Seattle almost right away because he was recruited. So in Seattle, I was at the University of Washington, and I was directing a program that was similar but different. It was a master's in public administration. And 10 years we were in Seattle, and all of a sudden John, my husband, who's an Alzheimer's researcher, gets recruited to come to Montreal. And I'm still the tag-along spouse. So we can't come to Montreal unless I have a position too, because I was pretty happy in Seattle. And so my position had to be at the Faculty of Management because that's what my background was. And one of the people I interviewed with was Henry Mintzberg. So I was there for an interview, and I was there to teach finance or accounting, as far as I knew. And Henry and I talked for quite a while, and we just hit it off. And Henry said, why don't you get involved in our IMHL and our IMPM programs? And I just said, well, why not? And so I sat in once, and then he said, why don't you teach a session? I taught a session, and then one thing just led to the other. Here I am.
And also, Leslie, it's interesting because, at the beginning of the IMHL, you do a thing where it's kind of like almost a personality test, and people, you can identify people in the group as more craft, more evidence, I don't remember the name of that triangle.
That's Henry's research with a colleague of his that is a triangle among art, craft, and science. And so he developed a little questionnaire that they piloted and tested whether you lean more towards science or you lean more towards the artistic side or craft. And he's developed it into, he's taken it further from just this, this initial, but we do that with the group.
Yeah, and so the group lines up, and then we spread out based on our scores on that questionnaire, and you get a good idea of who's actually in your class. And then Henry goes on to explain, so who's the more arts people? Of course, Henry was the arts. He's an engineer, but he was the top at the arts place. And then you had the science and the craft. It was quite interesting because it kind of reflects a little bit what you find out about the people. Now, I understand the three of you and Liz, who's a strong support in your program, and Henry, the three of you run this program, and you're all different.
Yeah, very. I always come out way, way down near science. always, no matter which way we do it. But I'll tell you something really interesting. One of the reasons Henry does this is so that you can understand more where your leanings are, but more important, that you can understand where someone else's leanings may be, so that when you go to form your teams in the workplace, you can decide whether you're looking for more people who lean more in your direction, or you can structure a more diverse team and purposely go after people who are at different points. But I'll tell you something, we tried this a couple years ago for the very first time. Henry was sitting next to me once, and we were up at Expérimentée in our first module. And Henry said, why don't you do mine and I'll do yours? We had never done that before. We'd only done it for ourselves. And so I learned that Henry and Liz, so the three of us did it for each other. Henry and Liz saw me very differently than I saw myself. They didn't see me leaning so totally toward science. And I didn't see Henry leaning so totally toward art. You know that Henry is trained as a mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
So, and I think back to, I don't know if Allie is still on the call, my daughter, when she worked at Hewlett-Packard, one of the first jobs after she finished, I can't remember if it was before her master's or after, but she worked on a team at Hewlett-Packard, so, you know, a company that was manufacturing machinery, basically, computers and printers and stuff, worked on a very diverse team, purposely structured so not everybody was the same and not everybody came from a scientific background. So I appreciated the diversity of a team, and that you should, when you're forming your team, you should at least have an awareness of who the people are that you're working with.
And you know, we've interviewed Bernard Pétieux in one of these interviews, Vice President of Casting and Performance at the Desautels, that says, you know, it's critical that your team includes diverse people, but it's more complicated. Tendencies of organizations, if they're not aware of these principles of the strengths of diversity, will actually recruit people that are very similar to themselves, you know, because it's non-threatening, it's familiarity, you know, but it's crucial to develop innovation, to work with very different. And hence, we decided in our living lab to open it up to other residents. It started with emergency medicine to family medicine now, and also other professionals, because we think this is very interesting. So I would just want to say, Leslie, in terms of what I'm gonna ask you one question, and then I'm going to ask your children to actually tell us something they know about you that we do not know, and vis-a-vis, yeah, that's a good one, eh? And maybe, you know, more in particular as to how you see, how has your mom actually had an influence on you to be the person you are all? You are all successful children. How has your mom had an influence on you? Because, you know, you could be a really busy leader in your life and all of this, but, you know, leave very little time for the people who are very special to you. And obviously that was not the case here. Family has been very important to you, and you brought them in on this Zoom as well, spontaneously. So I'd like to do that. So actually, and then I want to say is that we open it up as a priority to the students, and the students go around and ask one question. So I would like to ask you one question. How do you train a leader in healthcare? So you've seen, for example, Gaëtan Barrette, okay? So you've been in Quebec and you've seen leaders in healthcare. You've seen other health ministers, Minister McCann, the differences. And so we're talking ultimate leader. You've seen Elise Berger-Pelletier participated in her blind spot. She's been on her Zooms as well, young leader in healthcare and other. So how do you get to train them? What do you want them to come out of this? How do you train them, Leslie?
So I think one of the things that's really important is that we provide the opportunity for each person in the cohort to follow their own passions. And we're really emphatic about that. We push it mostly with regard to the final master's paper that they have to do. But all along, we I think we provide the infrastructure, but we don't dictate what people should learn or how they learn it. And one of the icons of the program is the reflection paper. So the reflection paper, which is the one written assignment following each module, is not uniform from participant to participant. It really focuses on that participant's learning in the module, what it means to him or to her, how that person is going to use it. So the focus is on putting it back to the individual, making that participant, you, Rick, and others, take the responsibility for your own learning as to how you're going to use it. And I think that's part of it. I'm going to share with you some of the comments that Jeremy Golden made in this Facebook post, because I think they're just so relevant. So let me share them, but mostly it's providing the opportunity and also learning that we're saying to participants in our program, help us to help you become the leaders and the managers that you can be. So if we don't have something in the program that you want, and we think it's a reasonable request, we will turn around our curriculum to put it in there. And most recently, we did that with a number of people wanted to learn how to write a business case. And I thought Henry was going to flip out when I told him. He was so upset. He said, the word business does not belong in healthcare. And we said, but this is what they're asking for. So we found a way to bring it in. I think in the schedule, we called it something else because Henry didn't want to call it a business case, but we provided it. Anyway, we try to make the curriculum relevant to what the people in the program want and to what we think the health systems or their employers want. But let me just share a couple things. This is I guess the teacher in me that wants to do this. I'm going to really quickly run through something. This came up in Rick's talk the other day. So I want to just share this, and we don't emphasize this in the program, and we probably don't emphasize it enough. Can you all see these slides?
Yes.
Okay. So your ability to control and influence, and let's say it's health policy, or let's say it's change in your organization, or let's say it's anything in the workplace, there's a very small zone over which you really have any control. And this is for the rest of your lives too, not just your work life. There's a zone beyond that you can influence, but that you can't fully control. And then there's a zone to which you can contribute, which is the bigger context, the health system. This is what we're going to focus on in our upcoming module in October that Rick's going to participate in. So I think understanding the difference, understanding what you really can control and what you can't is important. To expand your zone of control, you can probably do that in a number of ways, but one of the ways is whatever you do, make it the absolute best you can and exceed the expectations of others. So it's a way to make that red circle maybe go a little bit bigger. And finally, how do you expand the zone of influence? Well, I love this Margaret Mead quote. So a small number of people can really change the world. In our October module that we're in the final stages of planning, it's called the worldly mindset. And it's going to focus on context, on the world in which all these 17 health systems from which our participants come, the world in which those systems sit. So how can we expand our influence on those systems? That's going to be the focus of the module. So, sorry, I didn't realize this had a, so one way to think of that is that you when I'm teaching anything about measurement and performance measurement and thinking about ways in which assessment is done of programs, you have your programs that provide some output. And output is the kind of output that gets captured in numbers, percentages or whatever, that leads to different types of outcomes. The ultimate policy intent is going up the chain. You want to keep doing things so that you achieve the end result, whatever that may be. It may be getting COVID totally under control, or maybe getting rid of it. It may be getting rid of a childhood disease like asthma. It could be anything. But the extent of your influence and control is away from that end. To the extent that you are way at that ultimate goal, you don't have a lot of influence and control over that. There's so many other factors that go into it. So we don't spend enough time, I think, in the program talking about stuff like this. But finally, here's some of Jeremy's comments. And again, he posted this on Facebook. And I took a few words out because it had to do more with what was going on specifically in Australia. But this is when I asked him, you know, did you learn all this in the IMHL really as a joke? And he came back and he said, yeah, I did. And so these are things that you have to consider. And I consider Jeremy a leader. I don't know that he was this type of leader before. I'd like to think that the program really shaped his leadership. But I do know that as he went through the program and he went back, he took on more and more and more responsibility and was noted for it. So one of the things I want to just bring to your attention is the last, to open your mind to these options. We forget about political bias. And he was saying, leave the political bias aside. And here he was talking about Australia. The diversity of opinion is what our pedagogy and our program is based on. To not only hear it, but to really bring it into what you do, to integrate it. Recognizing the complex nature of what we do. Nothing that we're doing in healthcare today, on any level, in any healthcare institution, in any healthcare system, is simple. It's all complex. It goes beyond complicated. And making sure that people are engaged who are not just within the medical professions, but those with the non-medical background too, in the health sector. Thinking about, earlier, the third point he made, benefits, risks, and consequences, not just the medical, the economic, but the mental health points of view too. He made a specific point of saying that. So I'm going to stop sharing this. I think we don't train leaders. I'll say it again. We don't. We provide the opportunity for people to become leaders in their own right. Leadership is, you got to model it and you got to demonstrate it to be considered a leader. And by the way, you don't appoint yourself a leader. It's other people who will give rise to your leadership. You can't say, there's one guy at McGill, he's a professor, I won't name him. He goes into a class of graduate students and he starts the whole program by saying, who's a leader? And then, all these newbies in the MBA program raise their hand. I'm a leader. I'm a leader. No, you're not. You don't self-designate leadership. Leadership is earned, and it's other people who are designating your leadership.
Very well put, Leslie. Thank you.
And I want to remind, if you do ask my kids any questions, just think ahead because Christmas is not that far off.
So, what do you know as what has your mother taught you in terms of leader? What example has she showed you in terms of leader? How about we start with Joe?
Well, wait, I want to ask you something though, Rick, because you said you were asking me earlier what my mother has taught me, or were you directing it to my children, asking them?
I was directing it to them vis-a-vis you. So how they perceive you and what lessons actually have they learned from you in terms of, let's say, a leadership perspective, or anything that could inspire people like our students in this rotation. Because I see Leslie as now you may see her differently, but I see her as a silent leader in our class, always in the back of the class, introducing the speakers, and always factual, making sure everybody's happy and all this. Everybody works well, but she's behind the scenes a lot. And I wanted to emphasize that that's a critical role of leadership, is being able to deliver on what you promise. And so, Joe, please go ahead.
Sure. It would be interesting actually to see the other question, to see what your mother, our grandmother, may have. I mean, that'd be interesting for us. I would like to know. But I would say, listen, I would say a couple words: meticulous, detail-oriented, you know, like doing something thorough, a commitment to excellence. You're going to do it, really do it. Work ethic, which is something I came to later in my life, with a lot of tears shed because I was not the most motivated, student when I was younger. But also fearlessly to be brave enough to sort of not care too much what other people think. So I think if there's one sort of power skill, it's just fearlessly doing you. You know, something I tell a lot of the people I work with is, don't do your version of it. Let go of your idea of what. So there's a fearlessness in like not giving a what about, but what other people think, but really committing to your version of it. So yeah, and the other thing too is perspective is everything. One of my favorite quotes is from Max Planck: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so I would imagine my mom is, like everybody, different in all the different views, but I've inspired as a teacher myself because I've never seen another teacher have the genuine love for her students the way that she does, like a real, genuine, not try, you can't effort your way to that. And so that's one of the beautiful things that I get to see, Mom, when you're, when I've seen you teach, and I've seen, listen, I was a basket I was a baby in a basket at Simmons, so I've kind of been a part of my mom's teaching in many different ways, but lucky enough to see in the last couple of years, the love that you have for your people, your students, and the love that they have for you, and that you meet them as equals, that we are all equals. No one is above one another. And so that is a few things among many things that are endlessly and surprising. I'm surprised by and inspired by. So that's my little contribution to this. But I'm again, thank you guys for looping us into this, because it's really interesting for me doing the work that I do to be a part of this as well. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Joe. That was absolutely wonderful. No, I can't see the whole screen.
Ellie is still on. I think Lily.
Ellie's still on. Okay.
Ellie, I think Ellie's still on.
Ali,
Sorry,
are you at ease to say something about your mom? How's your mom?
Ali speaks French because her husband is French.
Ah ben oui, mais Ali, vous pouvez aller en français si vous voulez.
But she's muted also.
Elle n'est pas là. Ali?
No.
I was texting with her. There may be some issue she was having with hearing, where the kids may be using up some bandwidth. So I don't know if we can't get a hold of her.
I think their kids go to French
if
school.
She comes back, we'll bring her on. Now at this point, what we usually do is ask the students to ask you a question. Okay. To ask you a question and to try to think about, the 5 pillars of the Living Lab. So so we all already touched about wellness.
Right.
We talked about gratitude. We talked about family life. Be passionate about what you do. We've talked about leadership, of course. Innovation, bringing in different people. So we've touched on that. You live in Montana, rural Montana. So we could see the rurality behind you, and you've explained a bit, before the call what it is to live there. We understood about excellence and leadership and what it takes. And I mean, you're a young woman, Leslie, but in your generation, a PhD, in business, and it's not common. Even PhDs in business are not common.
Yeah.
And to go through that is very, and running the program of a famous, I'd like to ask you, how was it to work with Henry Mintzberg? But one of the students is going to ask that. So I would like to how about I leave it to Anne-Sophie to ask the first question.
So you've talked about the flexibility of the IMHL program, and I was wondering what are like the challenges and how do you keep a balance between keeping a structure of the program and maybe like having some learning objectives and also keeping that flexibility?
That's a great question. And you probably asked what is the most challenging part of what we do in running the program. First of all, I have to say Liz is on vacation, so she's not on the call. But Liz is our program manager, and she's been with us since 2015, I think. And we are just an incredible team, the two of us. So I think the fact that we respect each other, she calls me her boss, and every time she does, I have to slap her face because I say, I'm not your boss, I'm a colleague, we're a team. But I think you have to have the infrastructure and the support to be able to juggle. And so we do have learning goals for the program, and we have things that we know we want to accomplish, but we rarely decide to do anything without running it by others, getting opinions, asking what they think, being really responsive to what the participants in the program want and their needs, but also knowing what we have to do on our end because we're a master's degree at McGill. And Rick will know, we just came up against this because we are delivering our module in the fall online, and that was not planned. And the group did not want an online module, and they were pretty vocal about it. So we had to postpone it in June because they didn't want it, even though I wanted it. And I was sure we were going to go ahead with it, but we listened to them and we held off. And then we had to make the decision. And so we knew that it wouldn't go over well with everyone, but that was one of these things where we said, okay, we've listened to you. Now we have to move the program forward. And here's what we're doing. Are you on board? And even with that, we had a model for it and they rebelled. They didn't like our model. Our model was an 8-week delivery. And so I don't know how many town hall meetings did we have, 2 or 3, where we really listened to them. And then we came up with a totally different structure based on what the majority of them wanted. So it's a constant, I don't want to say a struggle, but it's a constant, it's exactly as you pointed out. It's constantly juxtaposing, it's their program, but we have a responsibility to the university and, and to the field. So it's the biggest challenge we face. So.
Very, very great answer and great question, because Anne-Sophie's innovation project with Lauriane is actually working on helping to make this leadership and innovation rotation better. Okay, so that's their focus on taking it another level. How would they take it to another level? So that's what they're devoting their time to, amongst other things. By the way, Anne-Sophie's an interesting young person we interviewed, I think in March, to hire her with Lauriane. So Anne-Sophie's parents, I mentioned at the beginning of the call before they joined, has a very big business of RVs, those, in the suburb of Montreal. And Marie-Josée is a big fan of those as well. And at the age of 16 years old, I think you were 16 years old, Anne-Sophie, she was driving big RVs for clients that were actually scared of taking them across to the South Shore of Montreal. And so here's this young person and just pushed into the business as, you could do it with her dad confident. So I said, when she interviewed and told that story, I said, I don't care, we're going to take this person. So on the job.
You can almost not get an RV in the US right now. They're so spoken for because that's how people are traveling around because they don't want to stay in hotels. So it's very hard to even reserve one in the US for summer travel.
Yeah, I bet they're doing great business, Anne-Sophie. Yeah, she's smiling. So So how about the second question? How about Benoit?
Okay, so my question, you told us earlier that you're not teaching how to be a leader. You're developing the inner personality of people to become a leader. Is there a type of personality that are, let's say, unteachable, that will not do great leaders or can't be a leader or are naturally inclined to be a leader? Is there some trait of personality that are better for a leader, let's say?
Wow, that is an interesting question. It makes me think of a couple people over time in the program that, where they leave the program. There was one in particular where I said, I just have no hope for this person. This person did not demonstrate anything, out of the ordinary that I would, sort of correlate with leadership skills. And then yet a couple of years later, I hear this person is heading a department and was appointed because of leadership skills. So I don't know. It's an interesting question. Not everybody has to be a leader too, because you can't have leaders unless you have some followers. So there's a great video that I'm going to share with Rick because I'll find it later. MJ probably has seen it. But Benoit, it's a great question. And I don't know the answer, honestly. I suppose there are, I can give you an example. We have an example of someone who is president of the United States right now, whom I think the guy has no leadership skills, and I think it's his personality. And yet he's considered the leader of the free world, because the president of the United States is always referred to as the leader of the free world. This guy has exhibited absolutely, in my opinion, I don't want this to get political, but zero leadership skills. And I know there are people, who may disagree with me, but, there's a personality. And so I think the type of personality that can't be a good leader is somebody who cannot entertain diversity of opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't mean to get political.
Question, Benoit. Laurence?
And speaking about diversity, I understand that in the program there's people from all around the world. Have you noticed any difference in the conception of leadership in any cultural, challenges and not conflicts, but is it hard? Does people arrive with some already made ideas and difference?
Yes. That's also a great question. We haven't had, and so sometimes Liz knows about the conflicts that exist or other things that are going on in the cohort, and I don't know because people seem to be more open with her, because I've heard about things sometimes years later and say, how did I not know that was going on? We have had, it's a really interesting question because we have had some very serious conflicts in prior cohorts, and they stem from differences in cultural values, upbringing, ways of life in different parts of the world. And one example was in about 2 cohorts ago, where we had a big conflict in the group with a small group of men who were gay and who were openly gay and shared with the class, and a larger group of Saudi Arabian men who, in their cultures, that was never tolerated, at least out in the open. And there were some very interesting and serious conflicts around that. And they had to do with whether we were going to serve alcohol at meals, over little things that you wouldn't think, there would be pork that was part of the meal sitting on the buffet. So there was that. There were some issues of intolerance of the fact that some of the men were openly outright about their sexual preferences, I guess if you say that. And to the extent that we brought somebody in to do a session specifically on this, somebody who does research in the area connected to healthcare. The other thing is that in some parts of the world, the delivery of health is guided by religious views. So people who came from Egypt, for example, if they were non-Christian Egyptians, if they were Muslim, their healthcare was guided by their religion, as opposed to what tends to guide healthcare in a lot of North America, Hippocratic Oath and other values. So bringing those out into the open is really dicey, because you want to, as an educator, and you want to have an open discussion, but it's not always safe in a classroom. So it's the one area where I actually have not felt competent to deal with myself and have brought in experts to help us when those types of conflicts arise.
It could be very tricky.
Very touchy. We had a man from Saudi Arabia once say vocally in class out loud to a group of about 35 participants that if you're gay, you should not be entitled to receive health care. And that's the comment that prompted me to bring a specialist into class to have a half-day session with the group.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Strong values, diverse background. It's very interesting. But in all, it is quite magical to be sitting at those tables with people from, from India, Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I mean, all parts of even our own country, the U.S. and
South America,
Europe, and you're just like, and then you change tables every day. You're at a different table, and you just learn so much, and people become kind of friends because already you join this because you have certain common interests, and so already there's. I don't know. It's just rich. I probably 25% of the goodness of this program is just meeting all these rich human beings from different backgrounds, which you'd never get an opportunity at an international conference. You say hi to people and you go by. You stick with your own group. You don't mix with all these other people. So it's a unique opportunity. I'm saying just there. And yes, we do see these cultural differences. And sometimes people actually, we discuss it amongst ourselves at beers and how's different, but that's what the world is made up of, this diversity. And so you're learning about the world, and it's quite incredible. I would like to maybe Catherine. So Catherine, I think Catherine's a very strong leader. She's a leader that listens a lot. Catherine, our research coordinator, she runs a big business. She's in charge of every other coordinator, of everyone, and is always there for me. And just an amazing person. And I know it's not easy to work with me sometimes in terms of we do lots of different things and it's hard. But it's funny because on the Zoom, I saw Catherine with her 3 little boys, and they're active and they jump all over the place. I'm like, okay, I know how she got me. I know how she can deal with me. It's nothing, she's just used to this. So I would like you to know, what have you learned, Catherine, from today? What is your take-home message today?
I've learned from what you said, but you didn't say it like explicitly. But you said that you have a lot of mentorship with individual mentorship with alumni and with students, and I would like to know what you think about that and how important is mentorship in a leader career. I think,
are you addressing to me?
Yeah.
So I think mentorship is really critical. I had an incredible mentor when I was in my doctoral program. He was a mentor before I joined the doctoral program. He was my thesis advisor, and he helped me form the way I became an instructor. And the way I became an instructor was successful at the time, and so it led to all kinds of other things. I think it's critical, and the role that we have in our program, where we have to provide mentors to the students in the program, that's a challenge too. And I had a conversation with someone in our program this morning who was about to embark upon the writing of her final master's paper, or at least wants to think about it. And she had so many good ideas, and I don't want to say the pressure or the stress on me, but the challenge for me was, who will I assign her as an advisor who will end up being her mentor? So the best advisors are people who will mentor you, not just to, evaluate a paper you're writing, but really provide leadership guidance. And it's a challenge because I think the role of mentorship is critical.
Thank you. And you do it a lot with the students.
I do, but I can't be a mentor. I also think a mentor has to I feel I have some responsibility when I assign somebody an advisor that I have to make a good match. You know, like the person should have some expertise, not just to be the rote advisor, but to be the mentor. And it doesn't always work 100% of the time. Sometimes I'll think somebody will be a great mentor for somebody else, but it doesn't work that way. So, but there's another place where we have to be flexible, because I will always change an advisor if somebody is in an advising role that doesn't work out. I don't have to do it very often, but every once in a while I have to do it. That's not a fun part of the job.
No, I mean, it's all, I mean, there's lots of hassles in running a program like yours. I could see it. I mean, I'm just on the other side, how complicated, but you are a detailed person and you don't mind, because you don't mind taking care of those details, and it's part of who you are, I guess. So, Leslie, if, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes I like to think that, you know, we kind of get an idea of where we're going in life and what's our purpose, and how we, in the wellness talk, we spoke about, you know, what's really important to you, and to never leave this in, you know, from your sight. And at the end of the day, life goes by fast, and you have to realize, you know, so how about you? Like, do you think that so far, if you were, no, these are COVID times, people, we never know what's going to happen and all of this. So how, if you were to, something were to happen to you, and I think all of us have thought about this recently, if it happened to us or any of our loved ones, if anything happened to you, how do you want to be remembered?
Here, I'm going to show you. I want my dog to remember me. I want to be remembered as a dog lover. I want to be remembered, I think, really, for what Joseph said about me. I want to be remembered as somebody who really cares and cared about all the people over the years in these programs, because I think if there's anything we're hoping to train people to do, it's to help make things better in the world, whatever part of the world they come from, and whatever small corner of the world we can hope for them to have impact. That's what I want to do. And the more people I can help to do that, I feel the better chance we stand for a better world. As I said, we've got 10 grandkids. I'd like to think that they will have the kind of world to live in, you know, that they can be proud of, and that they can be happy and healthy. So I worry about that. So the more people that can go out there and change this world and make it that place, the better I'll feel.
Well, I'm hoping that everybody here on this call will do their part. And certainly your talk was very inspirational. Thank you for bringing in your family. It was great to see you all. And I wish you a good weekend.
You too. And Rick, thank you for what you're doing, because I think what you're doing with the Living Lab and what you're doing for rural medicine is so important. And talk about leaders. All of you involved in the Living Lab are working with incredible leadership in this guy. I just...
Thank you very much.
No, it's true. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie.